Rev up your engine. All right, here's a Honda with 257,000 miles from Mechanicsville, Georgia, which has had some work done to it. And you'll see, even Hondas do break down, but then again, they are fixable. Now, his mother bought the car when it had 100,000 miles. Then he bought it when it had 200,000 miles on it. And now it has like around 240,000 miles on it. I like the sticker too. I completely agree with this. Now, the mother bought it with 100,000 miles, put 100,000 miles, and replaced the power steering pump and the steering rack. They were leaking and making noise. That's the only major work that she did on the car. Then he bought it with 200,000 miles. Now, unfortunately, his luck wasn't as good as his mother's, because between 200,000 and 300,000 miles, the engine started making noise. He had to put another engine in. And you might very well wonder, is it worth doing? Well, as you can see, this is a 2.4 double overhead cam Honda engine. They're pretty good engines. This is a used unit that had 90,000 miles on it from a junkyard. And yes, believe it or not, it's Mechanicsville, Georgia, and the mechanic there put a used engine in. Being that it's more country-ish, the whole job cost him $1,500, which is a very good price. You're never going to see this in a big city. Most guys are going to want $3 to $5 grand or more to sell you a used engine and install it in the car. But in this case, $1,500 was a wise decision. It had been burning oil, the old one, about a quart every 1,000 miles, and finally collected one out. But I'm assuming that came from the first 100,000 miles. His mother bought it with 100,000 miles. I can quite imagine the original owner did not change the oil enough in a Honda. If you're not going to do anything to your car but one thing, change the oil every 5,000 miles, because that's the biggest money that you can save in a car is the engine. At least change the oil. Keep a record. Put it in your glove box or something. Put it on your phone. Say change the oil every 5,000 miles or once a year. Then you won't probably have to worry about this. But we'll take a listen to this engine, the junkyard one. And as I listened to it run, I believe that the thing had 90,000 miles on it. It's not shaking. It's got the regular Honda noise. Hondas need their valves adjusted. It's got a tiny bit of valve noise. They all do that. Most guys never even adjust them and they still run perfectly fine. This one has all the normal noises that they make, so they actually got a pretty good engine for $1,500. There's a new power steering pump from like 100,000 miles ago. You can see it's still got the original alternator on it. They did change the water pump, but the transmission's still original. And this thing's still getting 34 miles a gallon. Honda makes good vehicles. There's no arguing that. Like I say, the engine, the previous owner probably didn't change the oil enough, but this one's only got 90 and it sounds perfectly fine. So this one's probably good for 100,000, maybe 200,000 more, maybe even more. Who knows? Keep changing the oil, don't overheat the engine. They can last a long time. Now, unfortunately, most people aren't going to get an engine like this installed and buy the engine for $1,500 total. If you had a car this many miles, this old, and it's going to cost you 5, 6, 7 grand to put a used engine in, you'd probably say, well, I'll try my pot luck with buying a used car versus just putting a used engine for that kind of money. But if you can find somebody to install a used one at a good enough price, hey, what the heck? Because realize one thing, these junkyards have engines. They're only worth whatever someone is going to pay. As a car gets older, there aren't that many people that are going to go buy an engine from them. So it's worth nothing. If nobody buys it, they get no dollars for it. So you can often barter at the salvage yards, and as time goes on, prices start to change. If the coming recession comes sooner than later, people need money, and they're going to charge less. If a mechanic has no business, he's making nothing. He might as well do it for half of what he used to charge, so he'd get some money versus no money. So the prices of stuff could be coming down, especially if a recession comes in sooner or later. People still have to make money and they're going to have to charge less. Now, it's pretty much standard Honda Accord 4-door, but he wants to know what kind of shape it's in, so we'll get my computer out. As you can see, it's got a lot of miles on it here. And here we go, checking through. We'll do an auto scan, do all systems. Now you can see it's held up pretty good for all these miles. The seats are dirty as they've been through Hades and back, but they're still all together. And it's got a little tent action going on the headliner. That's all it happens to these old Hondas. They got a comfy tent feeling to them. Dash hasn't cracked yet. The AC still works. And it's got a CD player too. Ooh. There's a few little faults coming up, but it's 40% done. It's a 2007, so the computers are a little slower on these. If you're curious about this scanner, this is an Autel. New one I'm trying out. It's a Maxicom MK808Z. It's not a cheap scan tool, and it's not a super expensive one, but it seems to do quite a bit. Now it's 90% done, 95. So far it's only had 2 different systems with problems. 100%. Okay, only 2 systems have problems. First, the ABS system, which you never expect them to really work all that well on an old vehicle. It says that the ABS vehicle speed control unit will quit communication above 30 miles an hour. 257,000 miles. You really don't expect any of those systems to work anymore. This is an ABS system. The anti-lock brake systems generally do not hold up this far. Something almost always goes wrong with them. As long as it stops okay and he's had no problems, most people will live with this. And as we see, the main problem is the right front wheel speed sensor has failed. Down in the right front. But then again, like I said, most people, car stops good enough, they don't care. They're not going to start spending money on something, an old car like this. That something else will probably break on that system being this old. Those computer run systems, like anti-lock brake, vehicle speed, as they get old, they're things that most people just say, well, okay, I'll live without it. I'm not going to spend a small fortune running down what's wrong with this computer system, when it's an add-on system anyway. Back in time here, and we'll look at the engine system. That's got a code. Catalyst system efficiency below threshold. He said that came, then he filled up with gas, it went away, and now it's back again, obviously. Certainly, it's at a very low level of failure. If it's below 95% efficiency, it'll trip the code, and it runs perfectly fine. Most people aren't going to go out and buy a catalytic converter. Now, I can see that occurring from the previous motor because this is 257,000 miles now, but the early motor was burning oil, then it blew up and they replaced the motor with the used one with 90,000 miles. So, perhaps if you did put a catalytic converter, that could fix the code, and the new engine isn't burning oil, so that could fix it permanently. If you had the old engine, then it'd be stupid to buy a catalytic converter because the old engine would clog it up with burned oil. In this case, if you wanted to fix it, but if it runs good enough and you don't need emissions testing in your area, most people just leave it alone. Or they'll try a little cleaner. Changing the gas sometimes will make the code go away. So what we want to look at now is, we'll see the live data of what kind of shape this car is in. And here we go. We're starting to look at the data here. Map sensor's normal. It's a 2.4 liter engine. It's very close to their 2.4. So that's working fine. The air fuel lambda is pretty close. 1.00 is perfect. It's 0.979899. Air fuel ratio is 14.4, 14.5. That's almost perfect too. You can see the fuel trim, short term and long term, isn't much. It's adding a tiny 1.05%, short term, long term. That's not bad at all. It's running slightly lean, just adding a tiny amount of fuel. And with that kind of mileage, it's pretty close to perfection. It says the catalytic converter is inefficient, but you can see the Bank 1 sensor 2, the sensor after the catalytic converter, is in the red. So it's probably not even a bad catalytic converter. It's showing inefficient because what rates the efficiency of the catalytic converter is the second oxygen sensor. If you wanted to fix that, you'd be better off replacing the oxygen sensor first. It's cheap, it just bolts off, bolts on, and that could easily fix the problem. These color-coded scan tools are phenomenal. So I gotta say, this Autel scanner is a pretty good scanner. Yeah, we'll go through more of the data here. This really does have quite a bit of data. The cheap ones are not gonna have all this information. See, the engine's running perfectly. All 4-cylinder misfires, 0 across the board. All in all, this 257,000 mile Honda Accord with a used engine, that's running pretty good, so let's take it for a spin. Old car, so no backup camera. That used engine's idling smooth, no shaking at all. Still shifts pretty smooth. 257,000 miles. Original transmission, still corners quite well, and it's still got the original struts on all 4 wheels. They're still original. Brakes are quiet. A little bit of wheel bearing noise. With this kind of mileage, the wheel bearings are going to make some noise. They're a little bit worn. It's not wearing the tires out, but I can hear it humming a little because I have mechanic's ears. I'll take my foot off the gas. There, you can hear it. Whoop, 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 whoop. Not loud, but it's starting. Here we are at our little drag strip. Nobody's behind us. Here we go. And it spins the wheels. That engine's still got plenty of torque in it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the engine or the transmission. Step on the gas, downshifts, smooth upshift. Hey, it's a real shame that the original owner, before they bought it, Probably didn't change the oil enough and the engine went out. Because these engines are strongly built. They were just lucky to find one with 90,000 miles and had it installed and purchased for a total of $1,500. It was definitely worth fixing this car. Certainly was worth fixing it, because look, I mean, hey, still goes perfectly fine. The way this thing's running now, I wouldn't think twice about jumping in this thing and driving to California and back. Turning radius, turned around really easy, didn't have to back up. Still handles perfectly fine in the twisties, even though it's got the original 4 struts on it. 257,000 miles. Whee! Turned into a classic road car because look, it's got the little tree air deodorizer sitting there. There they are. It's a classic. Although I do have to say, Caribbean Colada wouldn't have been my first choice. But the owners are from Puerto Rico, so it makes sense. That's in the Caribbean, right? So, it may look worse for wear with dings, various assorted bumps on it, but if you would have blindfolded me and took me for a ride in this car, there's no way I'd think it had 257,000 miles on it. They're well-made cars, and yeah, somebody screwed up and didn't change the oil enough, and the original engine went out, but it keeps changing the oil of this every 5,000 miles. I wouldn't be surprised if it went another 257,000 on the used engine that it's got in it. There's sometimes valid reasons to put another engine in a car if you can get one at a good price that has low enough mileage, and it's something like a Honda. Now, on the other hand, if say you had a worn out American car and you needed to put an engine in, going to a junkyard, there are all a bunch of worn out American cars, engines in the junkyard. Maybe not a smart idea to spend money putting another one in, but with these Hondas, they made millions of these 2.4 liter engines. So there's lots of them in junkyards, and like I said, if they don't sell them, they don't have any money. They're only worth whatever everybody's going to pay for it, and it's not like you go to the electric company and say, here's your bill, pay it. You can argue over money in a junkyard. If you're paying cash, they'll take whatever they think they can get out of you if you're going to walk out and not spend any money. So don't poo-poo putting an engine in a good car like this. If you happen to buy one, that the engine goes out because the previous people didn't maintain it. And like I keep saying, maintain your car and don't get in this position in the first place. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.